The sound of designer heels on marble echoed louder than the gunshot that should have killed him. Park Jun-ho woke to find his legs silent, his empire already crumbling. The divorce papers landed on his hospital blanket before he even knew what day it was. Signed, notarized, delivered with the efficiency of a business transaction. Kyung-mi didn't bother coming herself, just her lawyer's voice through speakerphone, cold as surgery. Mr. Park requests you sign by end of business today. She's already relocated. Relocated, while he couldn't relocate his own damn toes. The VIP hospital suite became his gilded cage. Machines beeped like countdown timers. IV lines snaked into his arms like the chains he used to put on others. Every breath reminded him, alive but abandoned, powerful but powerless. The tattoo of a descending tiger on his back felt like a prophecy he should have read sooner. His phone, 200 messages a day before the crash, now sat dark for 72 hours straight. Business associates evaporated. His lieutenants stopped returning calls. Even his own mother sent a single text. Kyung-mi says you need space, as if paralysis was something you could catch through a phone screen. Mr. Park, the discharge coordinator said, clipboard clutched like a shield, eyes fixed somewhere over his shoulder. Your wife emptied the joint accounts. The penthouse lease was in her name. Hospital billing says you have 48 hours before we transfer you to county care. County care? From silk sheets to state-funded hell? Jun-ho wanted to rage, to command, to make someone pay. But his voice came out hollow, broken. Get me my lawyer. Sir, your lawyer, he's now representing your wife. Conflict of interest, he said. Of course, everyone chose the winning side, and Jun-ho, the man who'd made Seoul's underground tremble with a phone call, wasn't winning anymore. The first 3 days were a masterclass in irrelevance. Nurses whispered just loud enough for him to hear. Such a shame, so young. I heard his wife left him for his business rival. Their pity tasted worse than the hospital food. At least the food didn't pretend to care. His second-in-command, Kwon, visited once, stood in the doorway like Jun-ho's condition might leap across the room and infect his ambitions. Listen, Hyung, the Park Syndicate needs leadership. You're obviously not in a position to... I'm paralyzed, not brain dead. Jun-ho's voice was gravel scraped over glass. Right, of course. Kwon had the decency to look uncomfortable for approximately 5 seconds. But the territory doesn't pause for recovery. Rivals are circling. Kyung-mi's new partner is making moves. We need someone who can actually move. The words landed like bullets Jun-ho couldn't dodge. I'm calling an emergency council meeting, Kwon continued, straightening his tie. We'll vote on interim leadership. For the good of the organization, you understand. Jun-ho understood perfectly. Sharks smelled blood in the water, and he was bleeding. That night, Jun-ho didn't sleep. He stared at his legs, foreign objects attached to his torso, mocking him with their stillness. He tried wiggling his toes. Nothing. Tried bending his knee. Nothing. His entire lower body had become a mausoleum, and he was buried alive inside it. The darkness whispered seductive promises. How simple it would be to just stop fighting. Stop enduring the parade of people who looked at him with pity, greed, or thinly veiled contempt. His hand drifted toward the call button, then past it, toward the morphine drip control. One adjustment. That's all it would take. Don't you dare. The voice cut through the darkness like a blade through silk. Jun-ho's head snapped toward the doorway. She stood there, backlit by harsh hallway fluorescence, a woman he'd seen 1,000 times but never really noticed. Tall, solid, dark-skinned, wearing a light blue maid's uniform that somehow looked dignified on her. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her eyes didn't flinch at the sight of him, this broken, abandoned king. "Who let you in?" Junho's voice was barely a whisper. "I let myself in. I work here, remember?" Dorothy Scott stepped into the room, setting down a worn canvas bag with the confidence of someone who'd walked through fire and kept her spine straight. Or, "I did work for you," past tense according to Kyung-mi's accountant, who called to terminate my employment this morning. "Then why are you here?" "Because someone needs to make sure you don't do something stupid." Her eyes flicked to his hand, still hovering near the morphine drip. "Like that." Junho jerked his hand back as if burned. "You don't know anything about me. I know your wife served you divorce papers while you were still figuring out how to breathe on your own. I know she liquidated everything she could touch and left you with nothing. I know your so-called brothers are carving up your territory like a Thanksgiving turkey. I know you've been lying here for 3 days wondering if dying would be easier than rebuilding." Dorothy pulled up the visitor's chair, sitting so their eyes were level. No pity in her gaze, just unflinching assessment. "What I don't know is whether you're actually going to fight or if you're going to prove every single one of them right." "Prove them right about what?" "That Park Joon-ho was only dangerous when he was comfortable, that the second life got hard, he folded like cheap furniture." Dorothy leaned back, studying him with unnerving intensity. "I've watched powerful men my whole life. Some of them stay standing when the floor falls out. Most of them don't. So which one are you?" The challenge hung in the air like smoke, and something in Junho, buried deep beneath the despair and self-pity, stirred. Anger. Pure, molten anger at being dismissed, at being written off, at being tested by a woman he'd barely acknowledged when she served his breakfast. "Fine," he ground out, jaw tight. "What do you want?" Dorothy's smile was sharp as a knife. "I want you to stop dying and start surviving. Then, when you're strong enough, we make you dangerous again." Junho studied her face, the determination etched in every line, the fierce protectiveness in eyes that had no reason to care about him, this broken, abandoned king. "I can't pay you," Junho said quietly. "I don't have anything left." "I don't want your money, Mr. Park," Dorothy stood, shouldering her bag. "I want you to survive. That's payment enough." "Why? What's in it for you?" "Maybe I just want to see if a king can become a better man without his crown." Dorothy's smile softened slightly. "Or maybe I'm just tired of watching good coffee go to waste. Either way, we start tomorrow, 6 a.m. Be ready." "Ready for what?" "Physical therapy, humiliation, pain, the long, ugly road back to whoever you're going to become." She headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Park, when you signed my discharge papers just now, yes, I forged your signature earlier. You became my responsibility. The hospital doesn't ask questions when someone is willing to take on the liability. So, congratulations, you're coming home with me." Junho wanted to argue, wanted to command her to leave, to mind her own business, to let him rot in peace. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he watched her walk away, this woman in a light blue uniform who'd just kidnapped him with paperwork and audacity. For the first time in 3 days, Park Joon-ho felt something other than despair. He felt curious about what happened next. Before we start, go ahead and like, comment where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you're ready for this journey. It truly means a lot to me seeing this beautiful community of story lovers grow across every corner of the world. Every like, every share, every word you drop in the comments helps us keep bringing these powerful tales to life together. Now find your comfortable spot, take a deep breath, and let me take you into a world where loyalty is tested, power is redefined, and love emerges from the unlikeliest of places. The first thing Park Joon-ho noticed when consciousness dragged him back was the silence. Not peaceful silence, the kind that pressed against your eardrums like water at depth. No phones ringing, no subordinates hovering, just the steady beep of machines and the antiseptic smell of a place where people came to either heal or give up. His eyes opened to blinding white, hospital ceiling tiles. Expensive ones, he noted distantly, the kind you paid extra for in VIP wings. His mouth tasted like copper and regret. "Mr. Park," a doctor's voice, carefully neutral. "Can you hear me?" Joon-ho tried to nod. His neck cooperated. Small victory. "What happened?" "You were in a car accident. Your vehicle went off Gangnam Bridge 3 nights ago. You're lucky to be alive." The doctor moved closer, and Joon-ho caught the slight hesitation in his movements, the way medical professionals looked when the news wasn't good. "However, you sustained significant spinal trauma. We performed emergency surgery, but the damage to your T12 and L1 vertebrae was extensive." "Meaning?" Joon-ho's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Meaning your legs don't work anymore." The doctor pulled up a chair, and Joon-ho hated him for the practiced sympathy in his eyes. "You have complete motor function loss from the waist down. We'll need to run more tests to determine if there's any sensation remaining, but as of right now, you're paraplegic." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Paraplegic. Joon-ho stared at his legs under the hospital blanket. They looked the same, but they'd become traitors. Foreign object, someone else's limbs attached to his body by a cruel cosmic joke. "How long until I walk again?" The question came out automatically, denial's first line of defense. The doctor's pause said everything. "Mr. Park, you need to understand. How long? The likelihood of recovery is minimal. With extensive physical therapy, you might regain some sensation, but walking..." The doctor shook his head slowly. "I'm sorry. The damage was too severe." Joon-ho wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to reach into his chest and rip out whatever was making it so hard to breathe. Instead, he lay there, staring at legs that would never carry him again, and felt the first crack in the armor he'd spent a lifetime building. "I need my phone," he said finally. "I need to make calls." "Of course, I'll have the nurse..." The door opened. Joon-ho's head turned, expecting a nurse, expecting one of his men, expecting literally anyone other than who walked in. Kyung-mi looked perfect. She always did. Hair styled in soft waves, makeup flawless, wearing the cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month, but it was her expression that stopped Joon-ho's heart. Bored indifference, like she was here to sign for a package, not visit her husband in the hospital. Kyung-mi, relief flooded through him despite everything. She'd come. His wife had come. Thank God. "I need you to..." "Sign these." She pulled a manila folder from her designer bag, extracted a stack of papers, and dropped them onto his legs. He felt nothing. The papers landed on his thighs like they were landing on a table. "Your lawyer says you need to initial every page and sign the last 3. Joon-ho stared at the documents, bold letters across the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. What is this? "Divorce papers, Joon-ho. Don't be dense." Kyung-mi checked her watch, a Patek Philippe he'd bought her for their anniversary. "I have a lunch meeting in 40 minutes, so if you could just sign, that would be great." The doctor cleared his throat. "Perhaps this isn't the best time." "No, it's perfect timing, actually." Kyung-mi turned her cold gaze on Joon-ho. "See, the way I figure it, you're not going to be much use to anyone anymore. No walking means no running your little empire. No empire means no money. No money means, well, this. And I didn't sign up for this. Junho's voice came out strangled. I'm your husband. You were my husband when you had power, when you had influence, when being Mrs. Park meant something. She leaned down, and her perfume, the one he'd bought her from Paris, made him want to vomit. Now you're just a burden, and I don't do burdens, darling. I told you that on our wedding night, remember? I'm here for the winning side, I said. You laughed, said you'd always be winning. She straightened, smoothing her dress. Funny how things change. Kyung-mi, wait! I've already transferred everything I could access. The apartment is being cleared as we speak. Your accessible accounts are frozen and redirected. The cars are sold. I'd take the yacht, but honestly, what would I do with it? She pulled out a pen, clicked it once. Sign, Junho. Make this easy on both of us. I won't. The words came out weak, desperate. I won't sign. Kyung-mi's laugh was genuine, which somehow made it worse. Then I'll contest it. With your medical condition, any judge will rule you mentally unfit to make financial decisions anyway. This way is cleaner, faster. She dropped the pen on his chest. You have 48 hours. After that, my lawyer gets nasty, and trust me, you don't have the resources to fight me anymore. She walked toward the door, heels clicking that perfect rhythm of someone who'd never questioned where they were going. Why? After everything? Kyung-mi paused at the doorway, looking back over her shoulder. You're a lion who lost his teeth, Junho, and I don't stay for the slaughter. Learn something from this. Loyalty is a luxury only the powerful can afford. The door closed behind her with a soft, final click. The doctor stood there, clearly uncomfortable, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Mr. Park, I'll give you some time. Get out. Sir? Get out. The doctor fled. The pen Kyung-mi had left on Junho's chest and fell to the floor with a tiny, pathetic sound. Park Junho, the man who'd made Seoul's underground tremble, lay paralyzed in a hospital bed, staring at legs that would never carry him again, and felt the first crack in the armor he'd spent a lifetime building. The next 24 hours blurred together in a fog of phone calls that went unanswered, and visitors who didn't come. Junho's phone, recovered from the accident scene, showed a battery at 3%, and a notification list that told the whole story. 17 missed calls before the crash, 0 after. He tried his lawyer first, disconnected number. His accountant, voicemail full. His mother, someone else answered, a man's voice he didn't recognize, and hung up when Junho identified himself. His guards, the 2 men who'd been assigned to him for years, should have been outside his door. Junho pressed the call button. A different nurse appeared, young, nervous. Where are my security detail? He asked. Sir, no one's been stationed outside your room since you arrived. That's impossible. I have protection. Call them. Tell them I need... Mr. Park, the nurse's voice gentled. No one's come to visit except your wife yesterday, and the billing department wants to speak to you about payment arrangements. Payment arrangements, because Kyung-mi had taken everything she could touch, and apparently his organization had decided he wasn't worth protecting anymore. Junho tried Kwon next, his second in command, the man he'd mentored for 5 years. The phone rang 4 times before someone answered. Young. Kwon's voice was carefully neutral. I was going to call. Where are you? I need you to... I can't come to the hospital. Things are complicated right now. Complicated how? A pause that stretched too long. The territory's unstable. Your accident created a power vacuum. We're handling it, but... Then get me out of here. Bring me home. I can coordinate from... Junho. Kwon had never called him by his first name before. Never. You're not in a position to coordinate anything. The council met last night. We voted. Junho's blood turned to ice. Voted on what? On who takes over operations while you're incapacitated. It was unanimous. I'm sorry, but you're out. You can't just... We already did. And honestly, Young Mi's new partner is offering better terms for territory sharing. The transition will be smoother if you just let it happen. Kwan's voice dropped. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your legs, but business is business. You taught me that. The line went dead. Junho stared at his phone until the screen went dark, and with it the last illusion that anyone was coming to save him. The Park Syndicate had moved on. His wife had moved on. The entire world had taken one look at his broken body and decided he was already dead. The next morning, the discharge coordinator appeared with a social worker in tow. Mr. Park, we need to discuss your next steps. The coordinator was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes that Junho didn't trust. Your insurance will cover one more week here, but given your financial situation... What financial situation? The social worker cleared her throat. Sir, your bank accounts show a balance of, well, effectively zero. Your wife withdrew or transferred all accessible funds. Your property assets are either in her name or currently frozen pending legal proceedings. We've tried to contact your employer, but I don't have an employer. I own... Junho stopped. Owned. Past tense. What are my options? There's a state rehabilitation facility in Uyoungbu. It's not as comfortable as here, but they have physical therapy programs and... A state facility. Junho's laugh was bitter. From VIP wings to charity cases. How fast the world turns. Mr. Park, there's no shame in... When do I transfer? Tomorrow morning, if you agree to... Fine, whatever. He turned his face toward the window, dismissing them. Just get it over with. They left, mumbling condolences he didn't hear. Junho stared at the Seoul skyline beyond his window, the city he'd once had in his pocket, now completely out of reach. He thought about the morphine drip, how easy it would be, how no one would even care. He was reaching for the control when the door opened again. Mr. Park, the orderlies are here for transfer prep. A nurse's voice, then stopping abruptly. Excuse me, you can't be in here. I work here, Dorothy Scott's voice, calm and immovable. Or I did until yesterday, same difference. Junho turned his head. Dorothy stood just inside the doorway, still wearing her light blue uniform, a worn canvas bag over her shoulder. Behind her, two orderlies with a gurney looked confused. Ma'am, we need to transport the patient. No. Dorothy pulled papers from her bag. Change of plans. Mr. Park is being discharged into my care. I've signed the liability waivers, the medical release forms, and the financial responsibility agreements. He's coming home with me. The coordinator who'd been there earlier pushed past the orderlies. Miss Scott, we discussed this. You can't just... I already did. Check with legal. Everything's filed. Dorothy's gaze finally moved to Junho, and there was something fierce in her eyes. Something that didn't bend. Unless Mr. Park wants to go to the state facility instead. Junho should have said yes, should have told her to leave him alone, to let him rot in whatever budget hospital room the government assigned, should have held on to his pride. But he'd been alone for 3 days, abandoned by everyone who ever claimed to care, and this woman, this housekeeper he'd barely noticed, was standing between him and a transfer to a place where people went to give up. I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because someone has to. Dorothy turned back to the coordinator. We'll need his prescriptions, a copy of his medical records, and the physical therapy recommendations. I'll be back in 2 hours with transportation. Miss Scott, he needs specialized care. Then it's good that I'm a certified nursing assistant with 3 years of rehabilitation experience. Dorothy's smile was sharp. I did my homework. Did you? The coordinator looked at the orderlies, at Dorothy, at Junho. Mr. Park, do you consent to this arrangement? Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to maintain some dignity, but dignity was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. Yes, Junho said quietly. I consent. Dorothy nodded once, satisfied. Good. I'll be back soon. Try not to do anything stupid while I'm gone. She left before he could respond, and Junho was alone with the staff who were now scrambling to process paperwork they clearly never expected to file. For the first time since waking up paralyzed, Junho felt something other than despair. He didn't know what it was yet, couldn't name it, but it felt almost like hope. And hope, he was learning, was more dangerous than any weapon he'd ever carried. Dorothy's transportation turned out to be a modified van that had clearly seen better days. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and careful hands, helped transfer Junho from the wheelchair into the passenger seat while Dorothy supervised with the intensity of a general directing troops. Watch his back, support the lumbar region. Good. Now the legs. No, don't drop them. Guide them. Better. Junho endured the process with gritted teeth, hating every second of being moved like cargo, hating the weakness, hating that he needed help with basic tasks that children could manage. Where are we going? He asked once they were moving. My place in Sungbuk-dong. Dorothy was doing something with medical supplies in the back. It's not much, but it's clean and safe. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, small kitchen. You'll have the main bedroom since it's on the ground floor. Sungbuk-dong? Junho knew the neighborhood, lower middle class, nothing like the Gangnam penthouse he'd shared with Kyung-mi. How does a housekeeper afford Sungbuk-dong? Rent control and a landlord who values long-term tenants over profit margins. Plus, I've been there 11 years. It's home. The van wound through Seoul traffic, and Junho watched the city pass by his window. Neighborhoods shifted from wealthy to working class. Luxury boutiques gave way to convenience stores. The world he'd ruled felt increasingly distant, like something he'd seen in a movie rather than lived. Dorothy's building was exactly what he'd expected. Old but well-maintained, with narrow stairs leading to upper floors and a ground-level entrance that was blessedly accessible. The driver helped transfer Junho to a basic wheelchair that Dorothy had apparently acquired while he was being processed out of the hospital. Thank you, Marcus, Dorothy said, pressing some bills into the driver's hand. Anytime, Dot. You call if you need anything, yeah? The driver glanced at Junho with something that might have been pity or might have been respect. Junho couldn't tell anymore. Take care of yourself. Dorothy unlocked the door, and Junho's first impression was chaos. Not dirty chaos. Everything was clean, but cluttered. Books piled on every surface, magazines, photographs in mismatched frames covering the walls, a small kitchen visible through an archway, pots hanging from a ceiling rack, furniture that didn't match but somehow worked together. It smelled like vanilla candles and coffee and something baking. It smelled like someone actually lived here. Dorothy wheeled him inside, and Junho felt the walls close in. The penthouse had been 1,500 square feet of minimalist luxury. This was maybe 600 square feet of lived-in warmth. His wheelchair barely fit through the doorway. I know it's not what you're used to. Dorothy locked the door behind them. But it's safe. No one from your old life knows about this place. That matters more than square footage right now. Junho looked around at the small space that was apparently his new reality. He'd gone from commanding a syndicate to being trapped in a housekeeper's apartment. from having men bow when he entered a room to being dependent on a woman he'd never properly thanked for anything. The rage came suddenly, violently. Years of control and power and pride crashed against the reality of his useless legs, and something inside him snapped. "This is where you're keeping me?" His voice rose. "In this cramped little home," Dorothy finished calmly. "The word you're looking for is home." "I had a home. I had everything." Junho gripped the wheelchair arms until his knuckles went white. "And now I'm here, in this shove." He shoved at the wheelchair, trying to turn it, trying to leave, trying to do anything that would prove he still had some control. The chair tipped. Junho felt himself falling sideways, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His upper body crashed to the floor, his useless legs following like dead weight. Pain exploded through his shoulder. The humiliation of it, unable to even sit in a chair properly, made him want to die. "Easy." Dorothy was there instantly, kneeling beside him. "Don't fight me. I'm going to lift you back up." "Don't touch me." She ignored him. Her arms went under his shoulders and behind his knees, and with one smooth motion, she lifted all 180 pounds of him like he weighed nothing. Junho had always been solid muscle, had spent years in the gym maintaining the physique of a fighter, but Dorothy picked him up with the ease of someone moving furniture and set him back in the wheelchair with gentle precision. "You're stronger than you look," Junho said, stunned. "I had to be," Dorothy said, adjusting his legs, making sure they were positioned correctly. 3 years ago, I weighed 60 pounds more than I do now, Mr. Park. Not all of it was fat. I've been lifting heavy things my whole life." She moved away, grabbing a throw blanket from the couch and draping it over his lap. Not for warmth, for dignity, covering the legs that didn't work. Junho felt something in his chest crack further. "I'm sorry for yelling, for you're angry, I get it. But tipping over wheelchairs means I have to pick you up more, and my back's not what it used to be." Dorothy headed towards the kitchen. "I'm making lunch. You'll eat it, and then we'll talk about house rules." "House rules?" "My house, my rules. First rule, no feeling sorry for yourself after 8 p.m. Before 8 p.m., you can mope all you want. After that, we focus on tomorrow." "That's the stupidest rule I've ever heard." "Second rule, you participate in physical therapy. No arguments, no negotiating, no 'I'm too tired' unless you're actually running a fever. You can't just..." "Third rule, you talk to me, not at me, not like I'm your servant. We're roommates now, Mr. Park, partners in this mess. That means basic respect." Dorothy turned to face him, wooden spoon in hand like a weapon. "I'm doing this because I owe you a debt, but I'm not your punching bag. You want to rage? Fine. Rage at the situation. Rage at your wife. Rage at God. But don't you dare rage at me for being the only person who didn't leave." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Because she was right. Dorothy Scott, the woman he'd never properly noticed, never properly thanked, was the only person left standing. "Why?" Junho asked quietly. "Why stay? Why take me in? I don't deserve it." "Probably not," Dorothy agreed. She turned back to her cooking. "But 3 years ago, I didn't deserve what you did for me either. Debt is debt, and I always pay mine." Junho sat there in his wheelchair, in this small, cluttered apartment that smelled like home, and realized he had a choice. He could keep fighting his new reality and make both of them miserable, or he could accept help from the only person offering it. "What are you making?" Junho asked finally. Dorothy glanced over her shoulder, and something in her expression softened. "You'll see. Just trust me." Trust. Such a simple word, such an impossible ask, but Junho found himself nodding anyway. "Okay, I'll try. For the next 2 hours, Junho refused to look at the kitchen. He sat in the small living room, staring at the wall of photographs. Dorothy with a teenage boy who had her smile. Dorothy with an older couple. Dorothy at various ages looking determined and strong. Not a single photo of him or Kyung-mi or his old life. This was Dorothy's world, and he was just a visitor. His stomach growled. He ignored it. "Lunch is ready," Dorothy called. "I'm not hungry." "Liar, I heard your stomach from here." She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "Come on, at least look at it before you refuse." "I said I'm not." "And I said lunch is ready. You can eat it or not, but you're going to sit at my table and be polite." Dorothy moved behind his wheelchair. "Unless you want me to feed you like a toddler." The threat was enough. Junho let her wheel him to the small kitchen table where 2 plates waited. And despite his determination to refuse food, despite his resolve to punish himself for his weakness, the smell hit him like a physical force. Kimchi jjigae. He recognized it immediately. The rich, spicy scent of fermented cabbage and pork, the kind of comfort food his grandmother used to make. But there was something else mixed in, something he couldn't identify. Cornbread on the side, golden and steaming, and what looked like collard greens but prepared Korean style, with garlic and sesame oil. "What is this?" Junho asked, despite himself. "Soul food meets soul food." Dorothy sat across from him. "My grandmother's cornbread recipe, your grandmother's kimchi jjigae method. I watched you make it once when the chef was sick, and my attempt at fusion greens." She pushed his spoon closer. "Eat." "You remembered how I made the jjigae?" "I remember everything about this house, Mr. Park. That's what housekeepers do." Dorothy picked up her own spoon. "Now eat before it gets cold." Junho looked at the food, at this woman who'd somehow remembered a dish he'd made once 2 years ago, who'd combined her culture with his like it was the most natural thing in the world. His throat felt tight. He picked up the spoon. The jjigae was perfect, not too spicy, rich with flavor, exactly how he liked it. The cornbread was sweet and crumbly, melting on his tongue. The greens were strange but good, the bitterness of the vegetables balanced by Korean seasoning. "It's good," he admitted quietly. "I know, I'm an excellent cook. You just never noticed." They ate in silence for a while, and Junho felt something shift. Not healed, not fixed, but maybe the tiniest bit less broken. "Dorothy," he said finally, "I don't remember. The coffee, the envelope you mentioned. I don't remember doing that." "I know. That's what made it mean something." She looked up from her plate. "You helped because you could, not because you wanted credit. That's the man I saw, Mr. Park. Not the crime boss, not the ruthless businessman. Just someone who saw another person hurting and decided to help." "That's not who I am." "Maybe it's not who you were," Dorothy corrected, "but it's who you could be, if you wanted to." Junho set down his spoon, his appetite suddenly gone. "I don't know how to be anyone other than what I was." "Then we'll figure it out together." Dorothy reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, squeezed his hand. "You aren't your legs, Mr. Park. You aren't your money or your power or your territory. You're just a man who got knocked down, and men can get back up." "I can't get up. That's the whole problem." "Then you do it different. You do it scared. You do it angry. You do it broken." Dorothy's grip tightened. "But you do it, because the alternative is giving up, and I didn't save your ungrateful ass just to watch you quit." Junho looked at their hands, his pale and scarred from years of fights, hers dark and strong from years of work, and felt the crack in his chest widen just enough to let something new inside. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." The first 3 days in Dorothy's apartment followed a brutal routine. Wake at 6, physical therapy by 7, breakfast by 9, rest, lunch at 1, more therapy, dinner at 6, sleep at 10. Junho endured it with gritted teeth, every exercise a reminder of what he'd lost, every failed movement a fresh humiliation. Dorothy pushed him without mercy and caught him every time he fell. On the fourth day, Junho awoke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment he forgot where he was, forgot about the accident, reached for his phone to check messages from his organization. Then he tried to get out of bed and remembered. "Morning," Dorothy appeared in the doorway with coffee. "Sleep okay?" "Fine." Junho pulled himself upright using the bed rails Dorothy had installed. "What's the plan today?" "After breakfast, we're working on transfers. Bed to chair, chair to couch, basic mobility." Dorothy handed him the coffee. "Then this afternoon, we're going through your finances." "What finances?" "Kyung-mi took everything." "She took everything she could access. But you didn't build an empire without having some emergency funds." Dorothy sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm thinking there are accounts she doesn't know about, properties in other names, assets hidden for exactly this kind of situation." Junho studied her over his coffee cup. "You've thought about this." "I've thought about a lot of things, like how the park syndicate operated, how money moved, how you always had contingencies." Dorothy's smile was knowing. "You're ruthless, Mr. Park, but you're not stupid. So where's the emergency stash?" For the first time since the accident, Junho felt his mind start to work the way it used to. Strategic, calculating. And Dorothy was right. He'd always maintained hidden accounts, backup plans for backup plans. "There's a safe deposit box," he said slowly, "under a false name at Wuri Bank in Myeongdong, another account in Singapore, and property in Jeju, a house registered to a shell corporation Kyung-mi never knew about." "Good," Dorothy stood. "After therapy, we access what we can. You'll need resources if you're going to rebuild." "Rebuild?" Junho laughed bitterly. "I can't even walk." "Neither could I after my accident. Didn't stop me from learning to stand again." Dorothy moved to the window, looking out at the morning street. "You want revenge on your wife, on Kwan, on everyone who abandoned you? Then you need to become dangerous again, but different dangerous, smarter dangerous." "How?" "By making them think you're finished while you're actually getting stronger. By staying hidden until you're ready to move. By being patient." She turned back to face him. "You taught me something once without knowing it, Mr. Park. You showed me that helping someone costs nothing when you have everything. Now I'm teaching you something. Survival costs everything when you have nothing. Question is, are you willing to pay?" Junho set down his coffee cup. Every instinct screamed at him to move now, to strike back immediately. But looking at Dorothy, this woman who'd rebuilt her life from nothing, he realized she understood something he'd never had to learn: how to fight from the bottom. "Teach me," he said. They were going through the hidden accounts after lunch when the television in the living room caught Junho's attention. Dorothy had turned it on for background noise, some afternoon news program he normally wouldn't have noticed. But then he heard the name. The park syndicate has officially changed leadership. Mr. Kwon Jae-sung, previously second in command, announced this morning that he would be stepping down in favor of a merger with the Choi organization. In a surprising move, Kyung-mi Park, ex-wife of former leader Park Jun-ho, appeared alongside Choi Min-woo to announce their engagement and joint control of the combined territories. Former leader Park Jun-ho has not been available for comment, though sources say he remains hospitalized after the tragic accident that left him unable to continue his duties. Unable, like it was a choice, like he'd decided to step down rather than being thrown away like garbage. "Mr. Park," Dorothy's voice seemed to come from very far away. Junho stood, or tried to. His brain sent the signal, and for one furious moment, he forgot his legs didn't work anymore. He pushed against the armrests of the wheelchair, rage and adrenaline overriding everything. "I'll kill them," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I'll kill them both. I'll—" His arms gave out. Junho crashed back into the wheelchair, and the reality hit him like a second car crash. He couldn't kill anyone, couldn't walk across the room, couldn't even stand up without help. "I need to go," he said, starting to wheel toward the door. "I need to get there. I need to—" "Where exactly are you going? Your old headquarters? The building your organization just handed over to Choi? That place? Move!" "No." "Dorothy, I swear—" "What? You'll what?" She didn't budge. "Wheel yourself to Gangnam, storm into a building full of armed men, fight your way to Choi with what? Harsh language? I can't just sit here." Junho's roar filled the small apartment. "That's my territory, my organization, and she—" His voice cracked. "She's with him, with Choi. She—" The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The timing of the accident, Kyung-mi's immediate departure, the frozen accounts, and the perfectly executed takeover. It had been planned. All of it. The car crash wasn't an accident at all. "She tried to kill me," Junho whispered. "Kyung-mi and Choi, they tried to kill me." "Yes," Dorothy said simply, "they probably did." Junho looked at her and something inside him shattered completely. All the pride, all the strength, all the carefully constructed armor he'd built over decades, it cracked and fell away, leaving nothing but raw, bleeding truth. He'd been betrayed by everyone, used by his wife, abandoned by his men, thrown away by the world he'd built, and now he couldn't even stand up to fight back. The sound that came out of him wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a scream. It was something primal and broken, the sound of a king realizing he was always just a man wearing a crown someone else could steal. Junho felt his face contort, felt tears he hadn't cried since childhood burning in his eyes. His hands went to his face, trying to hide, trying to maintain some last shred of dignity. "I can't," he gasped. "I can't even—" Dorothy's arms went around him, strong and steady and utterly without pity. She pulled him against her shoulder and held him while he broke apart, while every bit of control he'd maintained since waking up in that hospital bed finally gave way. "I know," she murmured, one hand moving to the back of his head. "I know. They took everything, everything." "Not everything." Dorothy's voice was quiet but firm. "They took your legs, your money, your territory, but they didn't take you. You're still here, still alive, still capable of thinking and planning and fighting back." "How?" Junho's voice was muffled against her shoulder. "How do I fight when I can't even walk?" "The same way I did." Dorothy shifted, still holding him but pulling back enough to meet his eyes. "You stop trying to be who you were. You become something new, something they won't see coming." Junho stared at her through tears he'd stopped trying to hide. Dorothy's face was fierce and gentle and absolutely certain. She believed what she was saying, believed he could somehow come back from this. "I'm scared," he admitted, the words feeling like they were being pulled from somewhere deep inside. "I'm so scared." "Good." Dorothy's hand moved to cup his face, her thumb wiping away tears. "Fear means you still care, means you haven't given up." She leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "Now cry if you need to, rage if you need to, but tomorrow morning we start building something new, something your wife and Choi won't understand until it's too late." "What if I can't?" "Then I'll carry you until you can." Dorothy's voice was absolutely steady. "That's what family does, Mr. Park, and like it or not, you're my family now." Junho closed his eyes, let himself be held by this woman who'd saved him for reasons he still didn't fully understand, and felt something shift in his chest. Not hope exactly, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it, maybe the first fragile seed of belief that survival was possible. "Okay," he whispered against her shoulder. "Okay." Dorothy held him a moment longer, then pulled back, her hands still on his shoulders. "Good. Now here's what we're going to do. First, you're going to wash your face. Then we're going to have dinner. Something simple. I'm not cooking elaborate tonight. Then you're going to sleep. Tomorrow, we start planning." "Planning what?" "Your comeback." Dorothy's smile was sharp and fierce. "They think you're finished, Mr. Park. Dead or broken, doesn't matter which to them. That's their mistake, because while they're celebrating their victory and getting comfortable in your chair, you're going to be down here getting stronger, smarter, more dangerous than you ever were before." Junho felt something ignite in his chest. The anger was still there, but now it had direction, purpose. "How long?" "As long as it takes." Dorothy stood, moving back to give him space. "Could be months, could be a year, but when you're ready, when you're truly ready, they won't see you coming until it's too late." Junho wiped his face with the back of his hand, feeling the tear tracks on his cheeks, feeling the rawness in his throat from crying. A week ago, he would have killed anyone who saw him like this. Now, with Dorothy looking at him without pity or judgment, only fierce determination, he felt something he hadn't felt since waking up in that hospital bed. He felt like maybe, just maybe, Park Jun-ho wasn't finished after all. "Tomorrow, then," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Tomorrow we start." "Tomorrow," Dorothy agreed, "but tonight you rest. You've earned it." She wheeled him toward the bathroom, and Junho let her, too exhausted to fight, too raw to pretend he didn't need the help. As she helped him with the basics of evening care, another humiliation he was learning to endure, he found himself thinking about Kyung-mi's face on that television screen, about Choi's smug smile, about Kwan's betrayal. They thought he was done, thought a broken spine meant a broken man. They were wrong. And Park Jun-ho was going to spend every single day proving just how wrong they were. The next morning started before dawn. Junho woke to Dorothy's hand on his shoulder and the smell of coffee that was too strong to ignore. "Up," she said simply. "We have work to do." "What time is it?" 5:30. Physical therapy starts at 6, but first we talk business." Dorothy handed him the coffee and pulled up a chair beside the bed. "You said you'd teach me about your finances, about how money moves in your world. I'm ready to learn." Junho sat up slowly, accepting the coffee. His mind was clearer than it had been in days, the fog of despair burned away by yesterday's breakdown. "Why do you need to know?" "Because you can't access most of your accounts right now. You show up at a bank, someone recognizes you, word gets back to Choi and Kyung-mi. But me," Dorothy smiled, "I'm nobody, just a housekeeper with power of attorney for her disabled patient. I can move through your world invisible." "Power of attorney?" "You signed it when you were half sedative in the hospital. Don't worry, it's legitimate. I had a lawyer friend draw it up properly." She pulled out a folder. Now teach me. Show me how to find what Kyung-mi couldn't steal. Junho studied her face, determined, focused, absolutely certain. She believed what she was saying, believed he could somehow come back from this. This isn't just about money, is it? No, it's about giving you weapons, resources, options. Dorothy opened the folder, revealing financial documents she somehow obtained. Kyung-mi thinks she's cleaned you out. Let's prove her wrong. Over the next hour, Junho walked Dorothy through the labyrinth of his hidden assets, the shell corporations, the overseas accounts, the properties registered under false names, the safe deposit boxes scattered across 3 countries. She listened with the intensity of a student taking an exam, asking sharp questions, taking meticulous notes. "How much total?" she asked finally. "If we can access everything, maybe $8 million. Some cash, some property, some investments." Junho set down his coffee. "Not what I had, but enough. Enough to rebuild. Enough to make them nervous." Dorothy closed the folder. "We'll start with the local accounts, work our way up to the international ones, but carefully. One wrong move and they'll know you're still playing." "We're doing this together," Junho said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, you teach me about money, I teach you about survival." Dorothy stood. "That's the deal. You want revenge? You want your empire back? Then you do the therapy. All of it. No complaints, no giving up. You push through the pain until your body remembers how to fight." Junho looked at her extended hand, calloused and strong and absolutely steady. This was a deal with terms he couldn't negotiate. Total commitment in exchange for total commitment. He took her hand. "Deal." "Good." Dorothy's grip was firm. "Now let's see if you can transfer from bed to wheelchair without my help. We've got a long day ahead." The therapy was brutal. Dorothy had set up a small gym area in the spare bedroom, resistance bands, therapy table, weights, exercise equipment that looked medieval. She pushed Junho through exercises that left him gasping and sweating, his upper body screaming in protest. "Again," she said as he struggled through another set of wheelchair transfers. "I can't." "You can. Again." Junho wanted to hate her for it, wanted to tell her to back off, to give him a break. But every time he looked at her face, he saw the same determination she'd shown when lifting him off the floor. She wasn't being cruel, she was being honest about what rebuilding required. "Why are you so good at this?" he asked during a water break. "Because I had to be." Dorothy was checking something on her phone, probably his financial records. "After my accident, I had 2 choices, give up or get mean about recovery. I chose mean." She looked up. "You're choosing mean too. You just don't know it yet." In the afternoons, their roles reversed. Junho taught Dorothy to read financial statements, to spot hidden transactions, to think like someone hiding money from the government and their spouse. She was a quick study, her mind sharp and analytical in ways he hadn't expected. "Kyung-mi transferred $2 million to this account in the Caymans," Dorothy said on the 3rd day, pointing at her laptop screen, "but she left a trail, sloppy. She was in a hurry, probably thought I'd die in the hospital." Junho leaned closer, studying the numbers. "Can you trace where it went from there?" "Give me a day." Dorothy's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I've got a friend who used to work in forensic accounting, owes me a favor." "You have a lot of friends who owe you favors." "I'm very good at helping people," Dorothy smiled without looking away from the screen, "and very good at remembering when I need help back." By the end of the first week, they'd recovered access to 3 accounts totaling $1.2 million. Not enough to wage war, but enough to start moving pieces into place. Junho began making calls from a burner phone, careful, coded conversations with a few contacts who had completely abandoned him. "You're building something," Dorothy observed one evening as she prepared dinner. "I can see it in how you talk, how you plan. Reputations can be rebuilt, especially when people think you're finished. They get comfortable, make mistakes. And you'll be there when they do. We'll be there. Junho watched her cook, another fusion dish, Korean-style jambalaya tonight. You're part of this now, Dorothy, whether you wanted to be or not. I chose this. She stirred the pot, not turning around. The moment I signed those discharge papers, I chose. No regrets. Junho felt something warm settle in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to gratitude, to affection. He pushed it down, focusing on the practical aspects of their arrangement. Emotions were liabilities. He'd learned that the hard way. But watching Dorothy move through her kitchen, humming something under her breath, he couldn't quite convince himself it was true anymore. The pain started during a massage session 2 weeks in. Dorothy was working on Junho's legs, maintaining muscle tone, preventing atrophy, going through the motions his body couldn't perform on its own. She'd done this every day, and every day Junho had felt nothing. Until now. Dorothy's thumb pressed into his calf muscle, and something sparked. Not quite pain, not quite sensation, but definitely something. A ghost of feeling, like electricity trying to remember how to flow through dead wires. Junho's breath caught. Okay? Dorothy asked, not stopping her work. Fine. The lie came automatically. Just tired. But he wasn't fine. He was terrified, because that spark, that tiny, impossible hint of sensation, meant something. Meant maybe the doctors had been wrong. Meant maybe his body wasn't as finished as everyone thought. Dorothy continued the massage, and Junho forced himself to breathe normally, to show nothing on his face. When she moved to his foot, pressing her knuckles into the arch, his big toe twitched. Barely. Just a millimeter of movement, but it moved. All done, Dorothy said, covering his legs with a blanket. How do you feel? Same as always. Junho kept his voice level. Can we work on financial projections after lunch? Sure. Dorothy washed her hands, missing the tiny tremor in Junho's fingers as he gripped the wheelchair arms. You're doing good, Mr. Park. Better than most people would in your position. She left to start lunch, and Junho stared at his legs under the blanket. His heart was racing, adrenaline flooding his system. He tried to wiggle his toe again. Nothing. Tried to flex his calf. Nothing. But the ghost of that sensation remained, haunting him with possibility. He couldn't tell Dorothy, couldn't tell anyone, because hope was dangerous. And if he was wrong, if his body was just playing tricks on him, the disappointment might actually kill him. But if he was right, Junho's mind started spinning in new directions, new plans forming, because if his legs were coming back, even partially, that changed everything, the timeline, the strategy, the very nature of what revenge could look like. Lunch is ready, Dorothy called from the kitchen. Junho wheeled himself to the table, and for the first time since the accident, he smiled. A real smile, not bitter, not forced. A smile that came from somewhere deep and calculating and absolutely ruthless. Dorothy noticed. What are you thinking about? Just grateful for the therapy, Junho said smoothly. You're right, I am getting stronger. Told you. Dorothy served the food, her grandmother's gumbo with Korean rice cakes. Stick with the program and you'll be surprised what the body can do. Junho ate his lunch and said nothing more, but in his mind he was already recalculating, already planning for a future where Park Junho didn't stay in a wheelchair forever. The next 2 weeks brought more sensations, a tingle in his ankle during morning therapy, a brief flash of feeling when Dorothy worked on his thigh muscles. Junho documented everything privately, keeping notes hidden in a burner phone Dorothy didn't know about. He tested his legs when she was out shopping, trying to move them, trying to feel them. Progress was microscopic. Some days there was nothing. Other days, a toe would twitch or a muscle would spasm, but it was there, real, not imagination. His demeanor changed. The angry outbursts stopped. The depression lifted, replaced by cold calculation. He worked harder in therapy without complaint, pushing his upper body to compensate for legs that might eventually work again. He dove deeper into the financial recovery, tracking Kyung-mi's money with the focus of a hunter tracking prey. Dorothy noticed. "You're different," she said one evening. "Calmer, more focused." "I'm accepting my situation," Junho lied smoothly, "learning to work within limitations instead of fighting them." "Good," Dorothy smiled, pleased. "That's the healthiest thing I've heard you say since we started." Junho smiled back and hated lying to her, but this was too important, too fragile. If he told her and the sensation stopped, if he raised hopes that couldn't be fulfilled, the setback would be crushing. Better to stay silent until he knew for sure. Besides, a secret weapon was only effective if it stayed secret. By week 4, Junho could flex his toes deliberately. Not much, not obviously, but enough to know his spine was healing in ways the doctors said were impossible. He started planning for contingencies, for threats, for the inevitable moment when Choi or Kyung-mi discovered he wasn't as helpless as they believed. The moment came sooner than expected. Junho was working on financial documents late one night while Dorothy slept. The apartment was quiet except for traffic sounds from the street and the hum of his laptop. He'd just traced another million of Kyung-mi's stolen money to a real estate deal in Busan when his phone buzzed. A message from one of his few remaining contacts. Just 3 words. "They found you." Junho's blood turned to ice. He immediately opened the tracking app he'd installed on all his devices months ago, back when paranoia was just good business practice. His old phone, the one before the accident, the one he'd thought was dead in a hospital property bag somewhere, was active, powered on, and transmitting its location. To this apartment. "No," Junho whispered. He checked the tracking history. The phone had been active for 3 days, pinging its location every hour, which meant whoever had it knew exactly where he was, had known for 72 hours. His mind raced. Who had access to his belongings from the hospital? Who could have taken the phone and powered it on? His eyes drifted to Dorothy's closed bedroom door. She'd been the one to handle his discharge. She'd had access to all his belongings. She'd been suspiciously well prepared with equipment, with legal documents, with everything needed to take custody of him. And she'd been vague about how she found certain financial information, claiming friends with convenient skills. Junho felt something cold settle in his stomach. What if the coffee story was a lie? What if Dorothy was working for Choi or Kyung-mi, keeping tabs on him, waiting for him to reveal where his money was hidden before... A sound outside. Footsteps on the street. Too many to be coincidental. Car doors closing quietly. The subtle sounds of people trying to be stealthy and failing. They were here. Junho moved fast, wheeling himself to Dorothy's door. He pounded on it once. "Wake up! We have company!" "What?" Her voice was groggy. "Mr. Park, it's 2 in the... Armed company. They tracked my old phone. Get dressed, now!" The grogginess vanished from her voice. "How many?" "I don't know, but we're about to find out." Junho wheeled back to the living room, his mind racing through scenarios. They were trapped. Ground floor, yes, but windows that faced the street where attackers were. One door that would be the obvious entry point. No weapons except kitchen knives and whatever Dorothy might have hidden. He'd spent weeks planning revenge and hadn't planned for defense. Stupid. So unbelievably stupid. Dorothy emerged from her room wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, but what stopped Junho cold was what she carried. A shotgun. Not some home defense pistol, but a full-length Remington 870, well-maintained and held with the ease of long familiarity. "You have a shotgun?" Junho said, slightly stunned. "I have 3. This is just the closest." Dorothy moved to the window, staying to the side, checking the street. 4 men, maybe 5, professional stance. This isn't a robbery. No, it's an execution. Junho's hands clenched on the wheelchair arms. Dorothy, if you're working with them, if this... She turned to stare at him, and the look in her eyes was pure fire. Are you actually accusing me of setting you up right now? Seriously? The phone was in my hospital belongings. You're the one who had access. The phone Kyung-mi's lawyer gave me in a box marked patient effects and told me to dispose of? The phone I put in the junk drawer and forgot about because I was busy keeping you alive? That phone? Junho felt shame wash over him. You what? Thought I spent a month feeding you, housing you, caring for you, just to lead killers to your door? Dorothy racked the shotgun with a harsh sound. We're going to survive this, and then you're going to apologize properly. But right now, I need you to tell me everything about how these people operate. The front window shattered. Dorothy dropped, pulling Junho's wheelchair down with her. Glass rained down, and then something small and metallic bounced into the room. Flashbang! Dorothy rolled, covering Junho's body with hers as the device detonated. Light and sound exploded through the apartment. Junho's ears rang, his vision whited out, but Dorothy was already moving, firing twice toward the window. Someone outside screamed. Bedroom, now! Dorothy was hauling Junho's wheelchair back, moving fast. They crashed through her bedroom door as bullets punched through the walls behind them. How do they operate? What's their standard entry protocol? Junho's mind cleared, tactical training from years ago kicking in. Flashbang first, front and back entry simultaneous. 3-man teams, they'll push hard and fast, trying to overwhelm. Back doors reinforced, they'll take time getting through it, which means they'll commit everyone to the front first. You've done this before. It wasn't a question. Marines. 2 tours. Thought I'd left that life behind. Dorothy's smile was grim. Turns out it doesn't leave you. The front door crashed open. Footsteps thundered into the apartment. Dorothy waited, counting silently. Junho could see her lips moving, and then stepped out firing. The shotgun boomed twice. Someone fell. Someone else returned fire, bullets chewing through the doorframe. Dorothy ducked back. 2 down, at least 3 more. Dorothy! What? I can feel my legs. She turned to stare at him. What? For 2 weeks, small sensations. Today, I flexed my toes. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure, but Junho gripped the wheelchair arms. I might be able to stand. Maybe help. Are you insane? You haven't walked in over a month. I know, but if they get past you, Junho met her eyes. I'm not dying in a wheelchair, Dorothy. Not without trying. More footsteps. Someone was trying to flank through the kitchen. Dorothy swore and fired through the bedroom wall, trusting Junho's knowledge of her apartment layout. A man screamed and something heavy crashed to the floor. 3 down, Dorothy muttered, reloading. Maybe 2 left. Then the back door exploded inward, not unlocked, blown off its hinges. The reinforcement hadn't mattered against shaped charges. Men poured through and Dorothy spun, firing, but there were too many angles now, too many attackers. A man appeared in the bedroom doorway. Dorothy's shotgun was pointed the wrong direction. The man raised his pistol, aiming at her head. Junho moved. He didn't think, didn't calculate, just pushed against the wheelchair arms with every ounce of upper body strength he'd built over 4 weeks of brutal therapy. His legs, those traitorous, unreliable legs, somehow responded. He stood, actually stood, wobbling and shaking, but vertical. The man with the gun hesitated, shocked. That second of hesitation cost him. Junho grabbed the cane Dorothy kept by the bed, a solid oak piece she'd bought for future use, and swung it like a bat. The cane connected with the gunman's wrist, sending the pistol flying. The man stumbled back, and Jun-ho followed, swinging again, hitting the man's knee. The man went down. Pain exploded through Jun-ho's legs. His spine felt like it was tearing apart, but he stayed standing, cane raised, blocking the doorway. Dorothy didn't waste the opening. She finished reloading and fired at the men pushing through the destroyed back door. One dropped, another retreated. She moved to Jun-ho's side, and together they held the bedroom doorway. Him with the cane, her with the shotgun, both of them shaking but refusing to fall. "Police are coming!" someone shouted from outside. "Abort! Abort!" The remaining attackers fled, footsteps running, car engines starting. Within seconds, the only sounds were sirens in the distance and Dorothy's harsh breathing. Jun-ho's legs gave out. He crashed to the floor, pain so intense he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But Dorothy was there, catching him, lowering him carefully. "You stood," she said, and there were tears in her eyes. "You actually stood." "I'm sorry," Jun-ho gasped, "for accusing you, for not trusting." "Shut up." Dorothy pressed her forehead to his. "You're an idiot, but you're my idiot, and you just saved my life." Jun-ho wanted to laugh, but it came out as more of a sob. "We make a good team." "Yeah," Dorothy held him while sirens got louder. "We really do." The police came and went, buying the story of a home invasion gone wrong. Dorothy's military record and registered weapons made their self-defense claim airtight. The bodies were removed, statements taken. By dawn, they were alone in Dorothy's destroyed apartment, surrounded by bullet holes and broken glass. "We can't stay here," Dorothy said, surveying the damage. "No." Jun-ho was back in his wheelchair, legs burning with phantom pain, but feeling gloriously, impossibly alive. "I have a safe house. The property in Jeju I mentioned, we should have gone there from the start." "Can you walk?" The question hung between them. Or was that a one-time thing? "I don't know." Jun-ho looked at his legs. "It hurt like hell, might have done more damage. But Dorothy," he met her eyes, "I felt them, and even if I can't walk far, even if I need the chair most of the time, I can stand when it matters." "Then we work with that." Dorothy started gathering essentials. "We heal, we train, and we make them regret ever coming after you." Jun-ho watched her move through the apartment, this woman who had saved him repeatedly, who had fought beside him without hesitation, who had never once looked at him with pity. Something shifted in his chest, something he'd been pushing down for weeks. "Dorothy?" "Yeah?" "The coffee story. Did you ever actually tell me about your son, or did I somehow overhear?" She stopped packing, turning to face him. "You asked what was wrong. I told you everything. Cried all over your expensive kitchen for 10 minutes. You listened, nodded, and said, 'That's fixable.'" Dorothy smiled softly. 2 days later, the envelope appeared. You never mentioned it again. I don't think you even remembered doing it. "I remember now." And he did, the memory surfacing clear and sharp. A crying woman in his kitchen, a son dying, money that meant nothing to him but everything to her. "You said his name was Marcus, after the physical therapist who saved me." Dorothy crossed to him, kneeling so they were eye level. "So yes, Mr. Park, every word was true. You saved my son's life without thinking twice, and I promised myself that if you ever needed me, I'd be there. No questions, no conditions." Jun-ho reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing the strong line of her jaw. "I don't deserve you." "No, you don't." Dorothy's smile was gentle. "But I'm here anyway, because I don't love people for what they deserve. I love them for who they are." Love. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Jun-ho had spent his whole life believing love was weakness, a liability, something that got you killed or betrayed. But looking at Dorothy, this fierce, gentle, impossible woman who had fought for him, who had stood beside him, who had refused to leave even when he'd given her every reason to, Jun-ho realized he'd been wrong about so many things. "I'm going to destroy them," he said softly. "Kyung-mi, Choi, everyone who betrayed me. It won't be clean. It won't be pretty. I know. You could walk away, take the money I've recovered, start fresh somewhere else. You've paid your debt, more than paid it." Dorothy's hand covered his, pressing it against her cheek. "I'm not here because of debt anymore, Jun-ho. I'm here because I choose to be. And if you're going to war, I'm going with you. All the way." Jun-ho felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked away for so long he'd forgotten it existed. Vulnerability, trust, the terrifying, exhilarating feeling of not being alone. "Then we do this together," he said. "Partners." "Partners," Dorothy agreed. "Now let's get you to Jeju before Choi realizes his hitmen failed." They left Seoul before noon, taking back roads and secondary routes. Jun-ho made calls during the drive, activating resources he'd kept hidden, calling in favors from the few people who still owed him. By the time they reached the Jeju safe house, a modest but secure property overlooking the ocean, wheels were already in motion. "How long until you're ready?" Dorothy asked, helping him from the car to his wheelchair. Jun-ho looked at his legs, felt the lingering burn of nerves remembering how to fire. Thought about standing in that doorway, pain screaming through his body, but his will stronger than the damage. 3 months, maybe 4. He looked up at her. "I need to be able to walk without the cane, need to be strong enough to face them on my feet." "Then that's how long we have." Dorothy wheeled him into the house. "I'll push you, you push back, and when you're ready, we go to war." Jun-ho spent the next 3 months in a focused fury of rehabilitation. Dorothy was merciless, pushing him through therapy sessions that left him gasping and sweating, but Jun-ho pushed back harder, driven by rage and purpose and something else, the desire to stand beside Dorothy as an equal, not as someone she had to carry. His legs came back slowly, first sensation, then movement, then balance. He graduated from wheelchair to walker to cane, each step a victory carved from pain and determination. Dorothy was there for all of it, catching him when he fell, celebrating when he succeeded, never letting him quit. They also planned. Jun-ho taught Dorothy everything about his organization, structure, territories, weaknesses. She helped him see things he'd missed, blind spots in his own empire. Together, they crafted a strategy that would hit Choi and Kyung-mi where it hurt most, their credibility, their money, their alliance. "You're not just taking back your territory," Dorothy observed one evening as they reviewed documents. "You're changing what it means." The old way was fear and violence. It worked, but it also made everyone an enemy waiting for their chance. Jun-ho looked at the ocean beyond the window. "Maybe there's a better way, more sustainable, less likely to end with me in a wheelchair again." "Or dead." "Or dead," Jun-ho turned to her. "You changed me, Dorothy. Made me see that strength isn't just intimidation. It's loyalty, trust, building something that lasts because people choose to be part of it, not because they're afraid to leave." Dorothy smiled. "Listen to you getting philosophical. I had a good teacher." By month 4, Jun-ho could walk short distances without the cane. His gait was careful, his balance not perfect, but he was mobile, functional, dangerous again, but in new ways. "It's time," he said one morning. Dorothy looked up from her coffee. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Jun-ho stood from his chair, no wheelchair anymore, just a regular chair, and walked to the window without support. "Kyung-mi and Choi think I'm dead or broken. They've gotten comfortable, made mistakes. We've documented all of them. The embezzlement evidence is solid. Wire transfers, property records, testimony from 3 of Choi's former accountants. The police will have enough to prosecute. And the territory? Your old lieutenants are tired of Choi's leadership. 6 have agreed to flip when you make your move. They want the old boss back. Well, not the old boss, the new version, the one who builds instead of just controls. Junho smiled. Then let's go home. They flew back to Seoul on a private charter, arriving after dark. Junho had arranged everything carefully. A new suit tailored to fit his slightly changed frame, a sleek black cane with a silver handle more for style than necessity, and documentation that would destroy Kyungmi's carefully constructed lies. The Park Syndicate headquarters was exactly as he remembered, a luxury office building in Gangnam, top floor reserved for leadership. Junho walked through the lobby, Dorothy beside him in a sharp business suit that made her look every inch she'd become over the past months. The receptionist looked up, saw Junho, and went pale. "Mr. Park? But we heard you were..." "Dead?" Junho smiled. "Not quite. Is Choi in?" Yes, but..." "Good. We'll show ourselves up." Junho walked to the private elevator, Dorothy keeping pace. His legs ached, but he refused to show it. This entrance had to be perfect. The elevator opened on the executive floor. Junho walked down the corridor he once owned, hearing voices from the conference room. Choi's voice, Kyungmi's laughter, the sound of people celebrating what they'd stolen. Junho didn't knock, just opened the conference room door and walked in like he'd never left. The room fell silent. Choi stood at the head of the table where Junho used to sit, mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open. Kyungmi was beside him, wearing jewelry Junho had bought her, her face draining of color. "Gentlemen," Junho said calmly, "and Kyungmi, I believe we have some business to discuss." "You," Choi found his voice first, "you're supposed to be paralyzed?" "I was. Turns out the human spine is resilient when properly motivated. Rehabilitation's a bitch, but I'm a patient man." Kyungmi stood abruptly. "You can't be here. Security!" "Won't be coming," Junho smiled. "See, your security team, half of them used to work for me. The other half are currently being arrested for the attempted murder charges related to a certain raid on an apartment in Sungbukdong. Funny thing about hiring criminals, they're not great at loyalty." Dorothy stepped forward, placing a folder on the conference table. "These are federal wire transfer records showing embezzlement of approximately $4.2 million from Park Syndicate accounts. Signed authorization by Kyungmi Park. Also included property fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder." Those are forgeries. Forensically verified, time-stamped, backed by testimony from your own lawyer who's currently cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for immunity. Would you like to call your attorney? Oh wait, he's the one who flipped. Choi moved toward the door. Junho's cane shot out, blocking his path. "Not yet, Minwoo. We're not finished." "What do you want?" Choi's voice was strangled. "Money? Territory? Name your price." "I want everything you stole. Every dollar, every property, every piece of my organization you tried to make yours." Junho leaned on his cane, casual. "But not more than that. I want you both to understand something. You tried to kill me. You took my legs, my money, my empire, and you thought that made you strong." Junho straightened, standing without the cane's support, letting them see that he was whole, changed but not broken. "You were wrong, because the man you crippled, he was arrogant, cruel, built everything on fear. But the man I became," Junho smiled, "he learned to build on loyalty, on trust, on being someone worth following, not just someone to fear." He turned to the assembled lieutenants, some who'd betrayed him, some who'd stayed neutral. I'm taking back what's mine, but not the old way. We're restructuring. No more violence as first resort. No more treating people as expendable. We're going legitimate where we can, ethical where we can't. And anyone who wants to be part of that, you're welcome back. 6 men stood. The ones who'd agreed to flip. Then 2 more. Then 4 more. Within minutes, only Choi's closest allies remained seated. As for you two, Junho pulled out his phone, dialed a number. Detective Kim? Yes, I'm here. Yes, they're both present. Doors are open. He hung up. The police will be here in 3 minutes. You can run if you want. Won't help. We have evidence in 6 jurisdictions. Kyung-mi lunged at him, rage overtaking sense. You ruined my life. You were supposed to die. I planned it perfectly. Dorothy stepped between them, and her presence was enough to stop Kyung-mi cold. You ruined your own life by being greedy and stupid. Mr. Park gave you everything, and you repaid him with attempted murder. That's on you. He's a criminal, a monster. He was, Dorothy agreed, but people change. You should try it sometime. Sirens echoed from outside. Choi made one last desperate move toward the window, but Junho's cane tripped him easily. The man fell, and Junho stood over him. I could kill you, Junho said softly. Would have in my old life, but I'm trying something different now. So instead, I'm letting the justice system handle you. Novel concept, I know. Police flooded the building. Detective Kim, someone Junho had cooperated with, providing evidence on multiple cases, entered with handcuffs ready. Park Junho, you've kept your end of our bargain. Told you I would. Junho stepped back, letting the police take Choi and Kyung-mi. The evidence is all yours. Everything documented, verified, ready for trial. Kyung-mi was screaming as they dragged her away, hurling threats and insults. Junho watched her go and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No anger. Just relief that this chapter was finally closed. When the police cleared out, taking Choi's remaining allies with them, Junho turned to his remaining lieutenants. Gentlemen, we have work to do. New structure, new rules, new goals. Anyone not on board? The door's open. No one moved toward the door. Good. Junho walked to the head of the table, but before sitting, he gestured to Dorothy. Before we begin, I want to introduce someone. This is Dorothy Scott. She's the reason I'm standing here, the reason I survived, the reason I'm offering you all a second chance instead of executing everyone who betrayed me. He met her eyes, and the warmth there gave him courage. Dorothy Scott, she's my partner, equal voice in all decisions, equal stake in what we build. And if anyone has a problem with that, speak now. Silence. Then one of the older lieutenants, Sung, who'd been with Junho for a decade, stood and bowed to Dorothy. Welcome, Ms. Scott. It's an honor. The others followed suit, and Dorothy handled it with the same grace she'd shown through everything. She bowed back, respectful but not subservient. Thank you. I look forward to working with you all. Junho pulled the chair beside his own. Dorothy sat, and Junho finally took his seat at the head of the table. Back where he'd started, but everything had changed. He had changed. Now, Junho said, leaning forward with his hands folded, let's talk about the future. They worked until dawn, restructuring the organization, setting new policies, opening legitimate business channels. When the last lieutenant finally left, Junho and Dorothy remained in the conference room, exhausted but satisfied. You did it, Dorothy said quietly. Took back your empire. We did it. Junho reached for her hand. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Wouldn't have survived the first week. I know, Dorothy smiled. You were pretty pathetic there for a while. Still am in many ways, Junho stood, offering his hand. But I'm working on it, with your help. Dorothy took his hand, let him pull her up. They stood face to face in the empty conference room, and Junho realized this was the moment, the one he'd been building toward through months of rehabilitation and planning, and slowly falling in love with her fierce, impossible housekeeper. Dorothy Scott, he said formally, would you do me the honor of having dinner with me? Not as my caregiver, not as my partner in crime, just as Dorothy and Junho, two people who might want to see where this goes. Dorothy's smile was bright and genuine and absolutely beautiful. I thought you'd never ask. Yes, Junho, I'd love to have dinner with you. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, and she kissed him back with the same certainty she'd shown when dragging him out of that hospital. When the kiss ended, Junho rested his forehead against hers. Thank you, he whispered, for everything, for saving me when no one else would, for seeing something in me worth saving. Thank you for letting me, Dorothy replied, and for becoming the man I saw in you all along. They stood there as dawn broke over Seoul, two people who'd saved each other in all the ways that mattered, ready to face whatever came next. Together.